And for more on this, we have Dr. Amit Kapoor, economist, joining us for more on the report. Yes, welcome to the studio, sir, Dr. Amit.
Thank you.
Firstly, I wanted to just say that yesterday, the first advanced estimates of GDP came to, which is expected to grow at a rate of 7.4%, up from 6.5% in the previous year. And now the UN projects India as the fastest growing major economy. What are the key factors that make India go so fast?
So, this is a very important question and people should learn from what India is doing. So there are two or three very big factors as to what is driving this. One is effectively the kind of infrastructure investment India is making. If you really look at the road infrastructure, the railway infrastructure, etc. Like if you really look at it, the investment in infrastructure is one of the biggest driving forces. And infrastructure also has a huge multiplier. Because whenever you invest in infrastructure, the GDP multiplier will be minimum of 2.2%. And that's from the historical data that you can actually, or 2.2 times, and that's the historical data. The second thing, if you really look at it, is that there is the whole reform that happened because of GST that is strengthening the household consumption. And there is clear evidence that people are spending more right now. In the last Diwali season, which has just happened in the last 3-4 months, there is a huge blip or a huge bump in the consumption patterns that we are seeing. The other thing that you're really looking at it is that government is easing the pressure on because of interest rates. And since that has happened, there is larger pool of money available, a cheaper pool of money available that improves the cost competitiveness of the country. And there are other things that the government has done. Yesterday, there was this whole the thing on MSME exports that has actually been happening. And the other thing, when you talk about the Indian economy, typically we were worrying that US sanctions will have a huge impact. What we are seeing is a very limited impact at this point in time. And then as India is diversifying exports, that is also going to be driving the economic growth. I think right now 7.4% is subdued. India has the potential to grow faster. In fact, if the global headwinds reduce, I would suspect that we would start touching growth rates of about close to 9 to 10% in the next 12 to 18 months.
All right. Also, strong domestic demand is a key pillar of India's growth, as we know. How does India's large consumer base also help insulate the economy from the global shocks which the whole world is facing right now?
So it's always about consumption itself, because when you have domestic demand or sophisticated domestic demand, what you would see is that people are asking for more, people are actually moving ahead. So if you really look at India in the last 10 to 15 years, our consumption disparity has significantly reduced. You have started moving towards more sophisticated products as well. The poverty rates are down. So once the poverty rates or the multidimensional poverty index, as you look at it, we are less than about 5% right now. So what we are, and then of course people are spending. If you really look at the middle class itself or the top end of the system, there is a large pool of money that is available to be spent. And we are seeing that evidence. If you really look at the top 10% of the Indian economy, which you would call as the middle class, the upper middle class, that is really consuming fairly strongly. Even the bottom 90%, if you want to say bottom 90% or bottom 30% or 40%, they are consuming, and the consumption thing is improving. That is also seeing a rationalization because of GST. I think GST reform of lower taxation was a very important impetus on domestic demand. And as incomes rise over a period of time, we are clearly seeing that evidence as well, that as incomes rise, the demand demand will increase. But the most important factor here is that we have started moving away from basics to much more sophisticated products. And that's the important fillip, because that will improve the demand for value-added products in India. That will improve other sets of things in terms of, say, India becomes more innovative, etc. So we are on a very interesting trajectory. In fact, a very interesting point was made about a few days back that India is in that Goldilocks period. And I fundamentally agree with it, because as the demand increases, demand sophistication, as GDP grows, as GDP per capita increases, the demand conditions will improve, so demand for sophisticated products will improve, you will see innovation happen, and so on and so forth. So India is insulated because of that. And I think even if India just is totally cut off from the world, assume for a minute, India is not going to suffer so dramatically, because it is our internal consumption, internal demand, the internal market, which drives our country very, very strongly.
All right. So, as you said, India is in the Goldilocks period. And of course, the GST reforms have really helped. But India's outlook remains very strong. Does this show India's increasing economic self-reliance and diversification of the trade partners?
Oh, definitely. I think the whole diversification that we are seeing right now, especially because of exports, and given what has happened over the last few years, starting with COVID, because when COVID had happened, we were thinking that it is going to really kill the economy or whatever,
Yes.
and it was we were hitting a roadblock. But the kind of reforms that we have seen, the kind of export impetus that we have seen, the China plus one strategy that was actually happening, and we are seeing fruits to that. The production link incentive schemes that are there, they are bearing fruit. The whole cluster-based approach of large anchor firms with small and medium enterprises coming around those areas, and that whole multiplier is also seeing a positive impetus right now. So if you really look at India itself, and then of course trade as well, we are moving in from the government policy has been that we should move away from basic products to value-added products, and we are already seeing those sets of benefits. And it's just not about trade or what do you call merchandise trade. It is also about services. Like as India moves into the world of AI, we are seeing that much more sophisticated technology products are also going to come through. It is only a question of time as to what India is really going to see. Right now, we are at about 4.2, $4.3 trillion. And I do fundamentally believe that India is going to be at least 4 times of this in the next 20 years. That's the minimum that India will actually achieve over the next 20 years itself.
Absolutely. Also, government investment is playing a central role. How is India's focus on infrastructure, as you also mentioned at the beginning, and CAPEX improved a long-term growth potential rather than just short-term stimulus?
So, like if you really look at the world itself, like whenever countries have invested in infrastructure, they have always grown over a period of time. If you look at, say, Germany, or if you look at United States, they invested in infrastructure in the 1960s, or Germany invested in 1940s during the World War. And their benefit has actually been accrued even till now. What we are seeing in India is that infrastructure investments, especially the road infrastructure, and the technology infrastructure, there are two things. So movement of goods is becoming much easier. If you really look at the time taken for movement of goods from one part of the country to the other part of the country, it is significantly reduced. It reduces the cost of movement as well. The other thing is the technology infrastructure that India has actually built, especially the Jan Dhan Aadhaar mobile thing that has happened. So the kind of banking availability that is there for people around the board, how women have actually got embedded into the system. These are infrastructure things, but what happens is the way people get involved into it is very, very high. And when you talk about hard infrastructure, let's say when you talk about roads, etc., the kind of employment that you see or that generates is very, very significant. The multiplier it creates is very significant. I think as we move ahead in terms of higher investments in infrastructure, and I do expect that government is going to improve that figure in terms of investments in the next budget itself that comes in the next few weeks. We would start seeing much better prospects. And this is an investment which is going to give you benefits for the next 20, 30, 40 years. It's not something which is just going to be a short-term benefit. There is an immediate benefit of employment, etc. The later benefit is in terms of movement of goods, movement of people, how trade is going to happen, how easy the trade will actually happen. The next thing is going to be, and as the government has really been talking about, that how do we ease the pains that happen in terms of doing business, etc. That is also happening. If you really ask me, as an economist, I can just tell you that India has seen the most significant change after 91 to 95. That's a period when reforms have happened. After 2014, India has seen the most significant period of reforms. And we are starting to see those benefits. And this insulation that you're really talking about, this growth that you're really talking about, is the effect that has happened after about 7 or 8 years. It was not immediate, but we are seeing those benefits. Assuming India stops still today, India stops doing everything, because of the inertia, the momentum that has actually been created because of these investments, we will continue to grow at about 6 to 7%.
You've been speaking about the government reforms, but the UN also cites recent tax reforms and monetary easing as growth enablers. How have these policy measures improved the business confidence and investment sentiment overall?
So if you really look at what happens is, like, whenever the demand conditions improve, like what is business looking at? Business is always looking at domestic markets. What these reforms have done is that these reforms have unlocked the consumption potential of India to a greatest possible extent. I do suspect, or I do expect, that more reforms are going to happen on GST. They might actually get reduced further over a period of time. But as it happens, the unlocking of consumption does happen. And when unlocking of consumption happens, people will start looking at market and start investing. So what we are seeing right now is that there is what I call bump in the domestic investments that we are seeing. You look at the various set of enterprises that are getting created. India is seeing a very important phase right now in terms of enterprise creation. I do not see in terms of, like, say, just FDI. We have to also understand what is the domestic creation of firms. Because when domestic entrepreneurship increases, that means people are starting to look at opportunities in a very unique and distinctive way. And this is what the young are doing right now. So whether you talk about technology, you talk about manufacturing, you talk about goods like, say, wellness centers, etc., healthcare, we are seeing a huge impetus there. And not only about manufacturing. I think what we are really seeing is a fillip in domestic tourism. There was a recent RBI report which said that UP saw close to about 60 crore people come for tourism there itself. So it is about services also. Like there is a huge shift that is happening, and as we are actually moving along. So investments are happening across the board. We are seeing those benefits accrue over a period of time, right? Yes, we have to accept one thing, that right now the consumption levels are at a lower level in terms of, like, people are spending less in terms of when they go for tourism, but over a period of time it will start increasing and we will start seeing benefits of those as well.
All right. Also, India is growing significantly faster than China and the US, as the report also mentions. Can India's domestic demand-driven model become a template for other emerging economies facing global trade disruptions at the time?
Yes, but like, it's a template. It's not a template which is very easy to copy. India had the benefit of a great demographic dividend. The other countries do not have it. They are much smaller. So yes, they can follow this template, but they'll have to rejig it in their own way. If say somebody like Zimbabwe has to follow it, then what they have to do is they have to call for investments. They'll have to create that domestic demand. They'll have to set up or they'll have to make sure that their banking system is right, etc. But it can certainly be a template. But I think there is one big difference that happens, and that is India's population dividend or demographic dividend, which a lot of other countries don't have. India is going to be in this very sweet spot for at least the next 25 years. China also took the benefit of it. US has also taken benefit of it. But consumption models are very important when you have large populations. For smaller populations, they have to really increase the GDP per capita very, very quickly. They have to go to much higher levels. Like if you say that India's GDP per capita is $2,800, $2,900 and US is $80,000, it does not, the comparison is not right. For a simple reason, on PPP, India spends more, it consumes more. In Australia versus India, it looks better per capita income, but then the consumption patterns are different and so on and so forth. So that's where it.
So, Dr. Amit, very precisely, if you could answer, looking ahead, what policy strengths will be most critical for India to maintain its leadership position among the major economies?
I think one is continuation of policy. Like, the biggest benefit India has actually had over the last few years has been that we've had consistent policy. There is a very clear view as to what India is going to do, how India will move. That is something very important. That builds confidence. And if we continue to maintain that trajectory, India will move into the right direction.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Amit Kapoor, for joining us and giving us all those analysis.